Well, it's coming to a close, 2024. It's going out on a warm and wet note. However, when the calendar flips over to January, so does the weather pattern because Arctic air is poised to spread into much of the United States east of the Rockies. And we're going to be talking about that in the long range with Dave Tolleris, who, excuse me, was one of the first to be on top of this upcoming pattern change. So we'll find out what his magic is, and we will take a look and see what we think is going to happen going forward. And that is all tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, which of course you can support where it doesn't cost you a dime. If you shop on Amazon, use our referral link that's pinned to the top of the chat board or on the description to this podcast. Just use the search bar, shop for your stuff. Amazon throws us back a little bit of coin for sending you there, and it's out of their pocket and not yours. So we appreciate your support of the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast via the Amazon affiliate link. Mr. Rayo is back on this Sunday. My head cold is almost gone. Excuse me. Just a little bit of residual. And Dave Tolleris is working on some charts right now, quietly in the background. Yes. So, Mr. Rayo, how was your holiday?
It was different from other holidays, but I won't get too much into that. The actual day itself, Christmas Day, we had a nice quiet day here. Christmas Eve was especially nice. It was the first Christmas Eve that we had with our grandchild, Julian, and everything was fine and dandy, and even had my sister up here to spend some time with us. So it's all good. And the season, the holiday is not over yet. Of course, we have New Year's Eve on Tuesday night and New Year's Day ringing in 2025 on Wednesday. And it looks like, Joe, even though we're going to be talking about a surge of colder air coming in, until then, until the new year arrives, it looks like it's going to be rather mild around here with, especially tomorrow, temperatures with some sunshine perhaps getting well up into the 50s and still near 50 on Tuesday. And then wet weather. Wet weather tonight, wet weather probably to ring in the new year on Tuesday night. In fact, I was commenting to Renata for the 68th time in my life. Still have been waiting for or to see a big snowstorm on New Year's Eve and wonder what it would be like if would people go to Times Square if there was a lot of snow on the ground or a lot of snow flying. Well, we did have a case in 1970 where a snowstorm did hit after the ball drop, and by the next morning we had about 6 inches of snow. But actually during the time when the ball was coming down, no snow. And I said to myself, really, it's amazing. You would think in 68 years we would have had at least one big snowfall on New Year's Eve, and it is yet to come. Instead, we're going to get yet another, and I've known a number of, in my life, a number of such cases where we've had mild weather and wet weather, and in fact, very wet weather, and we may very well see that again on Tuesday night.
All right, quick question. Because my background is still, with my family room decorated for Christmas. However, I will admit that today I took everything down and put everything away. So my question to you, Mr. Rayo, is when are you going to take your Christmas? You were just a smidge late in putting your Christmas stuff up. When are you going to take it down? Because you have a very short window potentially before the cold comes.
We've got other things to. We have other things to be concerned with. We're going to have an oil delivery tomorrow because I checked the other day and I said, "Whoops, we better get an oil delivery because it's going to be turning quite cold in the coming days ahead, and we're going to need the oil. So we're going to fill up the tank tomorrow, and also we're going to have other things to take care of before we take the Christmas decorations down." So
I'm just asking. That's all.
Well, it may not be until the middle part of January. Let's put it that way. If it warms up by then, we'll
Yeah.
see.
Well, I'm guessing that, you might have a tough go at it the way the pattern is shaping up. Let me just say hi to everybody on the chat. But by the way, New York City did officially have a white Christmas, right? So for the first time in 15 years, with 1 inch of snow on the ground Christmas morning. That's what Upton said.
Well, at Central Park, that was the case. Here, we probably had something closer to an inch and a half or 2 inches of snow, but
Okay.
I didn't have to break out the snow blower. I did it all by myself. Just scraped everything away. It's good exercise.
I guess.
Couple of hours, but it was good exercise. I will say, however, my goodness, low temperature last Monday morning, Joe, 3 degrees above zero. I mean, that was about as cold as I can remember around here for a few years. I didn't take any time. I didn't have any time to check when the last time we had a temperature as low as that here in Putnam Valley, but it was cold. And that kind of, well, this is the wrong analogy. I was going to say grease the skids, but it certainly made the surface quite cold so that it would allow for even the lightest of snows to stick, which did indeed happen in time for Christmas Eve to give us a white Christmas on Christmas Day.
All right. Welcome to everybody on the chat board tonight. And for those of you watching in the background, because we do have a sizable audience tonight, welcome to the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. We're sort of back to normal this week. So we'll be on Sunday through Thursday at 7:35 p.m. The occasional Friday and Saturday if have to deal with a storm. And of course, we'll let you know about it. So make sure you turn your notifications on and this way you won't miss us. And of course, if you like tonight's show, do by all means, please hit the like button because Joe and I like to get at least to 100 likes, and then Joe gets to ring his bell. And we all know how Joe likes to ring a bell.
Yes.
All right. All right, so let's do let's Dave's going to be ready in a minute. So in the meantime, why don't we just take a look at, what's going on right now, and then we're going to get into the long range because it's a very complex scenario that is shaping up for the next couple of weeks. Those of you who follow weather models know that they've been especially volatile in the last 3 or 4 days, and I suspect they're going to continue to be especially volatile. So right now in the east, there was a lot of severe weather that moved across the deep south and into the southeast earlier today. I know because I got some of that stuff. I had 3 inches of rain uh, last night and this morning, along with lightning and thunder. But that's all gone. We've got a few counties in northern Maine under a winter weather advisory. We have wind advisories up from Indiana east into western Pennsylvania and down into West Virginia. It looks like they have a high wind watch posted for southwestern and parts of north central New York. Areas of dense fog in Minnesota and Wisconsin, and also in parts of central Arkansas. Winter weather advisories, parts of central South Dakota. Then you kind of jump into much of the state of Montana. There's a number of counties in the mix there with winter storm warnings that extend down into western Wyoming and eastern Idaho. Avalanche warnings in parts of northern Utah, as well as parts of north central Colorado. In the west, we've got some wind advisories in parts of Nevada around Reno and some high wind watches there. Winter weather advisories in parts of the Sierra Nevadas and in the Cascades. We're looking at a narrow area of winter storm warnings and winter weather advisories. Because there's some places up there that have gotten over 100 inches of snow over the last couple of days. And here's our storm system in the east, pretty well defined on the satellite loop. And you can see this arm that extends southward down the east coast and into Florida. There's drier air behind it, but it's not cold air at all. Then, of course, you start to see Pacific energy that's been moving into the northern Rockies, and we'll be seeing what that does over the next several days as we start to see another storm system that's going to come out from the plains and then head east. That's going to bring the rain that Joe mentioned Tuesday night for New Year's Eve into Wednesday morning. Here's a wide view of the radar with the system in the east. Got a well-defined swirl there in the eastern part of the United States. And out in the west, we've got patchy areas of rain and snow that has moved on in. And we'll go to Joe Rayo. I'm going to switch you over, Joe, here, so you can. Well, yeah, we got our 100 likes already. So have at it with the radars, Joe, and take everybody around the Northeast and see what's going on.
Okay, very good. We'll do that momentarily. If I can just get the now, where did it go all of a sudden? I lost. Oh, I was going to say an expletive. I mean, I had everything all set up, and now it just disappeared on me. So, hang on for just one moment. I hate
Reset.
I hate this. I hate technology. I hate everything about technology.
It is your friend, Joe.
It never works for me. Let me just put it that way. It never ever works for me. If I was stuck somewhere in the middle of a road in the middle of the night and I needed to call somebody to help me, yeah, my phone would malfunction. There'd be no question about it. So let me see if let's see if it. Where is it? It's not. Joe, I don't understand any of this.
What do
My
you have on your screen?
nothing is the one screen that I want is not coming up, and I don't understand why.
Is your internet connection?
Ah, well, I can't do anything about
All
this.
right, don't worry. Let me finish this off. I'll finish it on my end, and then if you manage to get it going later, we can always come back to it. So we've got what looks like a stick of rain that's running through central Pennsylvania down
All
into
right, I got
eastern.
it. I got
Oh,
it.
now
I
you
got it.
got it. Okay.
Yeah, that's
All
good.
right. Back
All
to
right,
you.
we'll start with as I always do. We'll start with Upton here in New York, and you can see that for the moment, not much to show you. There's not really any significant areas of precipitation. There are a few spots here in the Hudson Valley and across portions of northern Jersey. Whether or not that's actually reaching the ground, I'm not sure. But the main area of precipitation is still well off to our west. I'm going to go down to Philadelphia for a moment, and you can see again just some spotty precipitation here and there, edging into the picture here in the far western end of the Philadelphia radar. You can see a more prolific area of rain and shower activity, a band, if you will, moving from central and southeastern Pennsylvania down through northeastern Maryland and heading for Delaware. This is the first of a wave of moisture that's going to be hitting our area during the overnight, most notably in the after midnight hours. If we look at Binghamton radar here, you could see that activity gathering over, again, central sections of Pennsylvania and also now into central New York, moving kind of on a south to north trajectory. And if we go further away to the west, let's say up to Buffalo, where the Jets got destroyed this afternoon, you can see that not only is there precipitation, it looks like that there's also a narrow band of what may be convection. It looks like convection moving across western sections of New York State. And it would not be surprising, and you can see most of the activity actually is over across the border in Ontario and over through Lake Ontario. And again, all this activity moving mostly on a south to north or south west to northeast trajectory. Let's go down to Raleigh, Durham, and you can see that this most definitely looks like a band of convection, and this could very well be embedded thunderstorm activity, and maybe even perhaps I noted earlier today from SPC the potential for tornadic activity as well. And you can see this band moving across central and into eastern sections of North Carolina. In fact, if we go further east toward Hatteras, you could see that band again moving or not moving actually. Yeah, there it's finally moving into the Virginia Capes. The Outer Banks of North Carolina. And again, this is all affiliated with a rather significant storm system. The storm itself is off to our north and west here in the tri-state area, but the associated frontal line is going to be what's going to be providing us with this burst, if you will, of heavy precipitation in the after midnight hours. We could pick up from that burst here in the New York area in excess of a half to maybe 3/4 of an inch of rain. So while it's not doing much of anything now, we do expect the precipitation to pick up in intensity and rapidly increase during the course of the coming hours. Here's Wilmington, Charlotte in North Carolina. And again, you can see all that activity moving off the Atlantic coastline. I want to see if I can go into the Great Lakes area. And you can see that here in Grand Rapids, I would assume that some of this, if not all of this, is in the form of some snow because the cold air is yet to move in, but this activity is kind of swirling around. You can see how the counterclockwise motion of the area of precipitation indicating that here's where the low is, and here is where the storm center happens to be. This storm center, as I said, likely will stay north and west of the New York City area, but again, the associated front or fronts will be what will be triggering our heavier dose of shower activity here later tonight and into the very early part of tomorrow. However, I might point out, Joe and Dave and everybody watching, that by tomorrow afternoon, all of this will be off to our north and east. A nice punch of drier air will be moving in, and after a rather cloudy, dreary morning, the afternoon looks to be bright and sunny, and looks like temperatures tomorrow could again rise into the middle, if not even the upper 50s, with the aid of that sunshine and a rather gusty south-southwesterly wind, maybe at times gusting to over 20 or 25 miles per hour. Joe?
All right. I'm going to just finish this off here, and then we'll bring Mr. Tolleris into the conversation.
Okay.
He's waiting patiently.
I never wait. I never wait patiently.
Storm predictions. Well, I won't argue with that. Storm predictions. Storm Prediction Center has a leftover marginal risk in eastern North Carolina and eastern Virginia, and also a marginal risk area across Ohio. And that's it. And no thunderstorms are forecast for the next 2 days. And as far as rainfall precip is concerned, we're looking at anywhere from 3/4 of an inch to some pockets of 1.5 inches across New England, back to eastern Pennsylvania. Precipitation really lightens up from North Carolina down to Florida, where we're talking about maybe 1/10 of an inch or less over the next 7 days. You've got 1/2 to 3/4 across the Ohio Valley, even some pockets of 3/4 of an inch to an inch in central Illinois, also a small stripe in Tennessee. And then, of course, the precip picks up a bit in the northern Rockies, in the areas that we're dealing with winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings. We're looking at some areas getting 1.5 to 2 inches of liquid in western Wyoming, as well as in northern Idaho. And, of course, the pounding of rain continues forever and ever in the Pacific Northwest. So on that note, let us now bring in Mr. Tolleris, and we're going to talk about what everybody. Well, before we get to that, okay, I just want to bring this up. We were just talking about this before the show started, but I every year I get I get worked up over the fact that you see people posting all these snow maps and all the rest of it, and it seems to get worse and worse. I this winter, I mean, right now it's at an extreme, and I have to I got to give you credit because you put up a post today on Facebook, and pretty much called those people out. And you're not the only one. I've seen a few other Mets, James Spann among them, criticizing not anybody specifically, but just the whole idea that people are putting up these maps that no one really understands, and it just to drive engagement, and it's so disruptive to what we do, in my view.
Yeah, it is. It is pretty disruptive. Let me get that fit back in here 1 second, guys. I think it's didn't quite. Actually, I see it. Okay, for some reason it didn't save it. Right.
By the way, if you could just bring your head down a little
Yeah.
bit,
Well.
because you're
Okay.
cutting
Hang
off.
on.
There you
Yeah.
go. We want to see that handsome face.
Well, let's leave the bullshit out of this. So
Well, of course. Anyhow,
let's see. Where did I put it like that? I want to make sure my. Hang on, I just have to find the drive here that I put most of this to. Okay,
right.
where is it? December 29. There it is. Okay. And there. View large. Okay, good. So now I can see what the hell's going on here. All right. So I guess.
Anyway, I was just praising you for the fact I liked your post. Calling out the social media animals that are out there doing their thing. I kind of get their passion, especially for the younger folks, but it is disruptive because people forecast shop and then they come to you and they're saying they're asking you questions about things 6, 7, 8, 10 days from now, and all you can do is just sort of say I don't know.
Right.
Very
Well,
frustrating.
it is very frustrating. Let's save this map. Let's see. I want to get the ocean. I want to get the ocean map here because it's pretty important to what's
Right.
happening.
So let me ask this question. So one of the things that's driving all of this is among other so many other things. But I know you've been paying attention to the Madden-Julian oscillation. We talk about it here
Yes.
from time to time. One of the things that struck me over the last week, because while we were in phase 6, which is
Yes.
supposed to be a warm phase, correct?
Yes.
For the
Yes.
east, and yet this particular trip through phase 6 was not especially warm.
No. But it was a fairly short duration. I mean, the cold lasted a couple of days, right? It lasted what, 3 days?
Well, but
The
we had a
cold.
couple of different shots of cold air that came in
Yes.
over the last 10 days
Right.
or so.
Right.
But my question is, I mean, I also noticed at the same time that the way the polar vortex was oriented in this sort of northwest southeast stretching position,
Yes.
it does. Can you make a case to say that sometimes one has perhaps more influence over the other as far as
Absolutely. And to me, I mean, if not just in let me take a look. See here. Hold on 1 second. If I can get this down a little bit. Change my chair. Right. It's not just the MJO. If you look at the MJO since the beginning of December, we were in fairly warm phases in early December.
right. In fact,
Okay, we were
I'm going to put up the CPC MJO chart that they put out every morning,
Yeah.
which has us right now. We're going out of phase 7 and about to go into
Right.
phase 8.
Right. Now, when you look at that chart, you'll see that if you trace it back into December, we were pretty warm. We were in the warm phases, and yet we had a lot of cold weather in December.
Yes.
So to me, what that's telling me is there's something else going on in this winter, because here we are supposedly entering La Niña, though we just began to enter La Niña. But here we are in these largely warm phases, and December's been pretty cold. In fact, if you take out the mild temperatures of today and tomorrow, the next couple of days, your December anomalies for everybody east of the Mississippi River is pretty cold. It's one of the colder December we've had in the last 10 or 12 or 15 years.
Right.
So, and that's a surprise because remember, all the predictions for December were for mild. Everybody had a mild December, and that turned out to be completely wrong. So, my good friend Ben Knoll and the other guys on Twitter, we all talked about December. I was like close to normal, but I didn't think it was going to be this cold. So, yeah, it was a surprise, no doubt about it. And there you can see it. Yeah,
the NSET chart. Do you know what? Because it doesn't say on here what model they use to derive this. Do you happen to know what they use?
That is the GFS bias corrected. So the solid green line is the actual mean of the track, and the yellow lines are the different members of the ensemble.
Right.
So you can see on that, if you look at the bias corrected, the solid green line actually goes inside the neutral circle a little bit.
Right. But
okay, and then it stops out again.
Right, but it looks like most of the members are actually inside, are in the phase 8 zone.
That's correct. That is correct. And we'll get to
Okay.
that. And that's been a problem. So, let me do the share. You want to do the share? Send me the share screen so I can
Yeah,
can do that now.
I think I already turned it on.
Okay, I want to make certain that I can do this
Yeah,
here. And
you can do that, and then I have to just change something here on my end so that everybody can see it. But you can go ahead and start sharing, Mr. Rayo. If you want to jump in with some questions, by all means.
Well, going back to what you were talking about a few minutes ago, and many of our regular viewers know that I've said this more often than once, and that is that if it were up to me, if I were back on television, I would try my best to present extended forecasts, limiting them to 5 days instead of
yes,
7 days and 10 days. And in some cases, some stations in the United States have even now gone to 15 days. I totally agree that that you're doing your viewers a disservice if you think, especially in the wild and woolly winter where things can change at the drop of a hat, that you can actually forecast or project the possibility of a major winter storm or any kind of a weather pattern successfully, much beyond 5 or 6 days. If you start talking about, well, 9 or 10 days from now, we're looking at a major storm. I mean, come on now, come on. I think that I really and truly think that we should limit ourselves to what we can best provide to the viewers or the listeners if you're doing it on radio, and stop at 5 days. We really have not gotten the ability to actually say to anyone that we definitely can forecast something, let's say 8, 9, 10 days from now. But again, this is the way of the world today. This is what executive producers and news directors want. They want to try to grab the viewers by demonstrating, hey, and we've got a 10-day or we've got a 15-day No, I would not go for that. And of course, if I were to make such a suggestion to the hierarchy at the TV station I'm working at, they'd look at me with a weird look, and very likely my time in front of the camera would be reduced. This guy doesn't know anything.
If not eliminated.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So I agree with you fully on that. And all you have to do is look at the GFS. Let's say 8 to 10 days out, and just see how quickly over a short span of time, how that one set of maps will change. You'll go from
right,
big storm to no storm to
right.
it changes so much. Stop at 5 days. Let it lay right there, and that's at least that's my my
Right.
humble.
Well, just real quick, and then we'll get Dave to get into this map with La Nina. I think James Spann, I think, put it really well on a social media post that he put up. Beyond 7 days, in terms of specifics, the skill is almost zero, and I
Right.
tend to agree with that.
Right.
I do agree with that. You can go out 2 weeks and get a flavor for what the pattern is going to be overall, sort of a general overview. There is some skill in that, but in terms of specifics, if you're going beyond after about the sixth or the seventh day, it's you're in fantasy land, and there's no point to it. It's a waste of energy. All right, Dave, La Nina, let's go.
Sure. And I generally agree with that. I mean, when I go out week 2, 3, you're talking trends. That's all you're talking. Okay. And the specifics is just meaningless. So,
Right.
and the problem is, when I do it for my clients, and most of them understand what these are trends. Okay. So, I can't tell you 10 days from now whether Chicago is going to be 34 degrees or 36 degrees. That's not possible. I can tell you whether Chicago is likely to be above normal, below normal. That I can tell you, but I can't tell you, or maybe even much below normal, but I can't go 34, 36 degrees. That's just crap. All right. So this is from Tropical Tidbits, and you can see this is La Nina. What you want to notice here is that this is a central Pacific La Nina. Notice you actually have it warming off the coast of Peru. Does everybody see how the coldest water is in the Central Pacific? This is a classic Molokai event, Molokai La Nina event, not the typical one. And let me see if I can.
By the way, you mentioned Peru. You know, there's a news story today about the fact that they closed all the beaches there because of the waves, waves of 12 to 14 feet high battering the coast there. You know, and I wonder if that's, you know, some of that's got to do with the interaction of the colder waters in some spots. And you said that there's warming going on to the north. I mean, I'm just putting it out there. But
I did not know that. And look at it.
Yeah, it was. It was. I saw it on Bloomberg a little while ago. All right, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So this is the CFS. Now, if you look at the date in the upper right corner there, it says December 5.
Can you make that a little bigger?
Why this is? Yeah. Let me see if I can do that. I think I can.
There you go. Beautiful. How's that? Yeah, perfect.
So you see the date in the upper right corner, right? Now the thick black line, that's the ensemble mean. And the other versions, the reds, the blue, the green, the red, the blue, the brown colors, they're the different ensemble members. Okay, so you can see what it was showing here. In early December, it said there was going to be a very, very sharp drop in the month of December. Where ENSO region 3.4, that's the official region that we use to declare La Nina, would drop. Okay, but then look what it does in January. It bottoms out in January, and then as soon as we get to past January 1st or 2nd, it begins to warm. See, it's a very sharp drop. Now, the other models, and when I saw this, and I was on the show last time, I said, and I mentioned this also in my weekly weather, this week in weather, I thought this was bullshit. I thought this was wrong. It was too strong and too sharp. None of the other models were showing it. It turned out the CFS was exactly correct. Bingo. So even though people get yelled at the CFS, they got this correct. Now, I want to change it. The reason why here we go. This is the one I want to show you. This is the latest as of December 28th, the actual buoys in region 3.4. Now, look at December 1. You see the December 1st line? Look how the line collapses. You see that very sharp drop off down to minus 1.2. But now look what's happened in the last 3 days. Boom! It's taken off like a jump jet. See that? So what's ever going, again, the CFS got this right. I couldn't believe it, but he got it right. So what that's telling me is that when it comes to using the MJO forecast models, the CFS has its stuff in one sock. It knows what's going on. And the other models are a little goofy because the CFS is the only one that got the ENSO right. And it's probably the only one that's getting the MJO right. So right now, the CFS has got the hot hand. Okay. So the other point I made in the winter, I want to make in the winter forecast here was, let me go back here. This was weak La Nina. This is my winter forecast, January, February, and March. Okay, these are all weak La Nina events. And now this is very different from what you normally see on from TV stations, the Weather Channel, Climate Prediction Center, AccuWeather, Weather Nation, what have you. They always show, mild in the east, no snow. But if you look at weak La Ninas and you separate them from moderate, strong La Ninas, you get a very different winter. I mean, this is not severe cold east of the Mississippi River, but it ain't warm. That's not what we're used to seeing. So, again, what happens is they just get lazy. The Climate Prediction Center pulls out the template above normal precip in Ohio Valley, warm and dry on the East Coast, and it's more stuff in the Northern Rockies. And no matter what it is, strong La Nina, moderate La Nina, it's the same damn thing, and it's just lazy. So I'm not concerned. It's just laziness. All right. And actually, what I think it is, and then this was the extent. This was the weekly climate model from the European. This was back on December 4th. For January 1st. That's not bad. That's not a bad looking forecast for 30 days out. That doesn't suck. And again, when I talked about this, you could see the area encircled in black indicating the Arctic air mass coming southward. So let me see. I'll make sure if I got all of these in here that I wanted to get in. And the other one was the T&H pattern. Now, a lot of people confuse with the P&A. This is not the same pattern. And the reason why I mention is because that is when we had that severely cold winter in 2013-14, okay, where it turned severely cold in December, January, February. Let me see if I have the map for that in here or not.
Right, for the folks who don't know, and I'm having a senior moment, so I sort of forgot. What does TNH stand for?
Sure, it stands for Tropical Northern Hemisphere.
Nice.
Okay. Now, what's different here is that you see the red area off the south of Alaska, off the British Columbia coast. In the P&A pattern, that red area is on the coast. Here, it's off the coast. And what happens is, because the ridge is shaped differently, the polar vortex gets pulled southward towards Minnesota and Lake Winnipeg. Okay, and the ridge is not on the southeast U.S. coast. It's in the Bahamas and Florida. So what you have is a weak ridge, and you have low pressure tracking from Texas to Virginia right along the boundary. So you don't end up getting monster nor'easters, but what you get are numerous waves, 3 inches, 6 inches, 5 inches, 4 inches, 8 inches. You don't get the big monster storm because it's hard to get, that big low forming between those two features. So that's what happens in the typical TNH pattern. So let me go out of this exit here and go to the other maps, and I'll see if I can call it up here what I want to look at next. Okay. Let's see here. Yeah. So let me go back to this. Okay. And now I'm going to go to, all right, I'll open up this up next. No, let's do the good one. Okay. So, yeah. So here is this. Let me open this one up. Sure, here. Open with phone 3. Okay, so this is going to be the CFS and blow it up a little bit as of December 29. Okay, right. And look what it's doing: phase 8, phase 1, phase 2, and then finally end of the month, phase 3. Now that's a pretty cold looking sequence if that ends up being correct. And the reason why that's important is during the winter months, what happens is in phase 8, look at the strong negative anomaly over the eastern United States. Phase 1 and then phase 2. And phase 3 is actually neutral, not that bad. But you can see these are the cold. And once you go into phase 4, 5, and 6, it turns mild again. Okay, but that's what phase 8, 1, and 2 does. It forms, that's where your negative anomalies are likely to be, which is why they have a tendency of being stormy weather patterns. Okay.
What about phase 3?
Phase 3 is very neutral. It doesn't have a bias one way or the other. It's almost like the neutral of them.
And 7?
7 is where we are now, and typically phase 7, you end up getting a moderate, slight ridge over the southeastern U.S., which is what we have right now.
Okay.
That's where we are right now. That's why it's mild. That's where we have been. Okay. Now, This is the January 13, 14 winter. And many people here remember this. Okay. This is from January to March. This was the last severely cold winter. We actually had another one, 14, 15. And both of those winters were positive TNH winters. And right. You may remember the severe cold. That was the back-to-back severe cold winters.
13, 14 was probably the one winter in my lifetime where it basically started in November and went right through mid-March.
Right.
Very little interruption.
Right.
14, 15 was mid-January was when it got triggered. Because if you remember the famous half blizzard. But yeah, it got triggered in mid-January. I remember there was a typhoon in the Pacific. In the West Pacific that recurved.
It started changing the whole pattern.
Right. It blew up this low in the Gulf of Alaska, and that just sort of set the ball rolling for what happened for the rest of January, February, and right almost till the end of March before the cold abated. So I remember my local lake was still frozen at the end of March. I never had seen that. Anyway.
Now, this is the GFS extended, okay? And it does the same sort of thing. Now, again, notice what it does after mid-January. It turns an neutral circle. Okay, most of the models do that because they go to regress towards the mean. The mean is for the MJO to be neutral. So as you go further out in time, it's always going to regress to the mean. Let me see if I have some other MJOs I want to show you here because they're kind of cool. We'll get to these maps in just a second. Now, this was, here's the European model for December 28. Notice what it does, okay, and then it turns into the neutral circle, okay? So it's almost always going to do that. Now, this is the 8 to 14 day. I'm sure everybody saw this from the other day, how cold it is, the 8 to 14 day. I presume we all saw this, okay? Let me see here. This here is the week 3 and week 4. Look how cold that is. So CPC is on board here with this happening. Now, this one I want to show you because, when was this? Okay, so this is, go back forward. This is the European model from December 24. And what I wanted to show you was, look here the day before Christmas, the red line, the image on the right-hand side. Okay, the red line, the blue line. You see how it goes to phase 7? It just barely touches phase 8, and then wham, it goes in the neutral circle. See that? It loves to go in the neutral circle. But if you look at the dots on the left-hand side, which represent different time frames, day 5 is the pink dots, day 10 is the orange dots, day 15 is the blue dots, and 20 day is the green dots. Many of those dots are in phase 8, 1, and 2. Okay, so that's what it was showing. And then the update came in on Christmas Day, and now you can see this. Here we have December 26th. The European suddenly shifted way out to the left. You see that on the left-hand side screen? The line is the solid line is now in phase 8 and 1. Here's the GFS. There's the CFX. They all shifted. Okay, and that's what was triggering it. Now, let's talk about the first event. The first event coming up is January 6th, right? Now, before we get to that, we are going to have a low going through the Ohio Valley on New Year's Day. That's going to bring the rain, okay, to the East Coast. That low is important because it goes up into the Ohio Valley, the St. Lawrence Valley, and then it becomes a huge ocean storm in southeast Canada. And that affects this next storm for January 6th. Now, this was the GFS model from December 28th, which was yesterday. See how the main low is in Michigan? Okay, yes. This is what's known as bullshit. And the reason why it's not accurate is because, let me call up the map here, if I can call it up for a second before I call them up. I didn't get this organized as much as I wanted to, which was my mistake. I'm sorry about that. That's okay. Right. So what was happening is this is the system of the European for today, and this is what it was showing on December 28th. That's with the same upper air map. So you see the big green and blue area in Missouri and Illinois, the close 500 low. Notice the ocean low over in Nova Scotia. That's what's known as a 50-50 low, an ocean low. At 50 degrees north latitude, 50 degrees west longitude. It's also known as a new. It's also known as a Newfoundland. Huh?
Right, and I was just going to say, you also have strong ridging and blocking up in the North Atlantic and across the Arctic.
Those two things. Right. Those two things lock the pattern in. Okay, so you have a west-based NAO into Hudson's Bay plus a huge ocean low. That means that system cannot go into Missouri up to the Great Lakes. That just violates the laws of physics.
Right.
It's wrong. I'm sorry. Okay. This is why you have to be. This is what you have to know. So again, I'm not predicting whether it's going to be 27 degrees or 25 degrees 10 days from now. I'm just looking at the pattern overall and say, no, this makes no sense. And that's why. So sure enough, that's exactly what happened. So I'm going to go back to the map here. That's the GFS. Make sure I got the right map here. And sure enough, this was the European from early this morning, this Sunday morning. Okay, where's the low? Ohio. Nice snowstorm for the Great Lakes and northern Ohio Valley. Ice in Pennsylvania goes over to rain in New England. You can see the map on the right. Everybody see that? The problem is when you look at the ensemble, okay, again, because we're dealing with 9 days, 8 days from now. Look at the ensemble. Look how much colder it is. The thick black line there is the 0 degree 850 isotherm. All that gray stuff is snow in Virginia, in Pennsylvania. So that's very different.
Anytime we get into a pattern like this, particularly when we're dealing with something along the lines of a 50-50 low, or we get the blocking up to the north, it just seems like, the models, the operational models anyway, never seem to have a good handle.
Once you get within 7 or 8 days, yes. And if you look at the January 2016 storm, once we got within 7 or 8 days, the models nailed it. When you look at the February 2014 storm, once you got within 7 days, they nailed it. When you remember that Christmas Day snowstorm that hit New York City, went off the East Coast, 10 years ago? Once you got within 7 days, the models nailed it. But not before then, because there's just too many variables. So, and let me show you here. Now, this is the other system, the one for January 8th. After January 6th, there's no on January 8th. All right. And this is the GFS from early. Is this from this morning? You can see what it looks like a big storm. The only reason I'm posting this is to show you have a large Arctic 1045 high coming down into the Dakotas. Okay. The system bombs out. It pulls in the cold air. And you get a nice snowstorm. You get a major snowstorm on the East Coast. The snow drought ends, if this is correct. And then behind it, look at the wind flow behind this thing. I mean, that's just hellacious winds. So that's an impressive system if it happens. This was the GFS from this morning for January 6th. Okay, so here now notice the GFS now has the low in Indiana, not Michigan. And you have, look at the cold air damming in Virginia. sleet and freezing rain, snow in DC, okay? And then what happens is it expands, okay? And now you have snow breaking out, moderate and heavy snow in northeast Pennsylvania, threading into New Jersey, into upstate New York. Michigan's getting hit. Eastern Ontario's getting hit. You got an ice storm in Virginia and Maryland, okay? That's a pretty, and then it's a pretty nice looking system. Look at the ice showing up here on the map. It just gives you an idea. I don't know if it's going to be this much ice, but it could be.
Let's. So now on today's run, on the 18Z run,
right
on the GFS, the primary low goes to southern West Virginia.
Right, and it's getting pushed to the south. Each run is getting pushed further and further south.
And the snow line gets to just about to New York City, and it just stops.
Right.
Okay.
And
because everything is sliding underneath.
Right. And we don't know if that's true or not. Okay. But the point is that now it's swinging the other way. Okay. Because now it's seeing it. It's seeing the pattern better. Okay. And these are the 850 temperatures, just to show you how cold it's going to get. All right. So these are 850, 1 mile above the ground. Okay. So the 0 degree isotherm is the range snow line. For those who don't know that, I just want to point that out to you. So this is the evening of January 2nd, right after New Year's. So DC is -8. I'm like -6. New York City's -10. Chicago's -11. Indianapolis -9. Albany -11. Okay, -10 in Boston. This is now Saturday, January 4th. The cold air comes plunging southward. The snow line is in Atlanta. Raleigh is -8. I mean, good googly moogly. It's been a long time since Raleigh's 850 temperature has been -8. Okay, New York City -14. DC -15. Columbus, Ohio, -15. I mean, this is some cold stuff. Now, here's the January 6th event. Notice the line gets pulled northward because the low's coming into West Virginia. So it gets pulled northward a little bit, right? Okay, that's fine. Then after that low passes, look at this. Boom! Okay, -26, 850 temperatures in Chicago. If they have snow on the ground, that's way below zero. That's 20 degrees below zero. Same Columbus, Ohio, -23. That's 20 degrees below zero if there's snow on the ground. If there's snow on the ground in DC, -15, somebody's in DC, Maryland's going to go down to zero. Okay, same thing in New York City. I mean, if not the morning of January 9th, the morning of January 10th, if there's snow on the ground.
If there's snow on.
Right, and here's morning of January 11th. It's some cold stuff. There's some cold stuff. Now, with the difference here is that, remember we talked about how the European model had that big upper low for January 6th in Missouri and Illinois? Now look where the low is. You see the green blob over Kentucky, Tennessee?
Right.
It's being forced to go underneath the ocean low in southeast Canada, and then the monster block in Greenland, the red and the brown color in Greenland. It's forced to go underneath it. That's why the other solution was Bravo Sierra. It just was not correct. This isn't Bravo Sierra, okay? And you can see the short wave goes right through Virginia and Tennessee, okay? And that's what the old map was showing. Huge difference. Old map, new map, okay? That's
a big difference.
Yeah, there's a pre right before it, so that's where it's Kentucky. Okay, I mean Tennessee, and then I think let me see here if I have it. I'll go back to the other maps on this. Yeah. So there's the okay, and this is the GFS and the European. Now, if I have the map for it, I think I do. The operational European, I shifted it way south. If I don't know if I presented the European here or not. Yes, there's the GFS 18Z GFS like you had. There it is. And then the, like you mentioned, there it is on the 18Z GFS. And then the European, I believe, also had it. There's the European. You remember the European having a low in Illinois and going to Michigan? Now look where it has it. South Carolina, it hits Virginia and North Carolina, West Virginia. Again, this is probably too far south, but it shows you it's reading the pattern. And that's what it does. So
I am amazed at the volatility.
Yes.
The last 3 or 4 days with this particular surface low for Monday the 6th.
Yes.
And we don't, whenever it's a general progressive west to east pattern, you really don't see, you see maybe a little bit of volatility, but you don't see storms shift from Cleveland to Atlanta in one run.
Right. Well, and you normally you don't. Okay. But what happens is that the model is showing this, and then it sees something it didn't see before. Okay. And then, so when you see a shift like that, either all the models are goofy, okay, and that's unlikely. You'll see one model get goofy, but we don't see all of them. And what that's telling you is it's seeing something it didn't see before. And part of the problem is the January 1st low, which goes up into Southeast Canada and then stalls in Southeast Canada, that sets up the pattern for January 6th. So that low has to bomb out in Southeast Canada and stall there on January 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. Then we'll know for certain what happens on January 6th. Right now, the models are guessing. They're educated guesses. They're probably right. But that has to low got to form first. So once that Ohio Valley low goes up there on January 2nd or 3rd, then the models will be able to nail the January 6th low. But that has to happen first. Now, this is a European event for January 9th or 10th. Okay. Some models have the second event on January 8th. Some models have it January 9th. Some models January 10th. I happen to think it's going to be January 9th or 10th. But you can see the European is pretty monstrous for that thing. This is from early this morning.
The one thing I did notice is I want to just kind of touch on this the possibility of a second event, and I'm going to take the screen here for a moment and bring up the GFS.
Sure. Okay.
Joe, do you have anything you want to add here?
Well, all I'm going to say is that, it's nice to talk about or speculate about what may happen January 6th or 7th or 8th or whatever, but, we really are not, it all depends upon the algorithms that all of these models are using. We really will not have a definitive idea until a lot of this activity reaches the west coast of North America. The data sets are more plentiful, and we'll be able to get a better idea. And that usually comes about 3 to 4 days before the event. So if there's going to be something happening on January 6th, probably we won't have anything definitive to say until maybe January 2nd or 3rd, which is still a few days out. Till then, it'll be fun watching how we vacillate from one particular possibility to another, or even beyond that. If we talk about like January 7th or 8th or whatever, it's interesting and fun. Certainly, it gives us more to speculate about now as opposed to the last 2 or 3 years where we had nothing to talk about. Right. Nothing. Now at least we have something to talk about and something to speculate on or whatever. So who's to say? I will also say that it has been a long, long time since we've seen outbreaks or projected outbreaks of cold weather reach all the way down to the Gulf Coast. I mean, we've had our share of cold weather in the Midwest, Mid-Atlantic, Northeast over the last few years, but none of it has ever really penetrated down to northern Central Florida. This is the first time I could remember in quite a long time where the citrus belt is going to be in big trouble, that they're going to have to make significant plans in advance to protect their orange orchards and whatever, because again, it's been a long, long time since we've seen the cold air penetrate all the way down into the northern and central part of the Florida Peninsula, but that looks like that's going to be the story coming up in the next week or 10 days.
Buy those frozen concentrated orange juice futures. Really? I'm not kidding you.
No, I understand. Sure.
Absolutely. So and the other point I would add to Joe, I would say add to your point, Joe, is that one of the reasons why we do this is because we get better at it. The more you do it, they're able to see. I mean, the battle right now is once we get within 4 or 5 days, we have a pretty good idea of what's going to happen. The battle, the uncertainty is the 6 to 10 day time frame. That's where the edge is. Sometimes you get a clue, sometimes you're way off, sometimes you're half right. It's in between, stuff like that. So that's what the battle is, the 6 to 10 day. And the reason why you do this is because the more you practice it, the better you get at it. Okay. And if you never practice at all, you just say, okay, that's my barrier. I'm not going to go beyond that time frame. That's fine. But it limits, you only get good at that. It's like baseball and fornicating. You only get good at it when you practice it a lot. Really, it's what it comes down to. So,
all right. Well, I'm going to resist a couple of obvious jokes that popped into my head. I have this is the 18Z GFS. One thing I've noticed is that I'm just kind of looking, we've seen the model sort of try to spit out another bigger, something of size, let's call it, around the 10th or 11th or whatever the date you want to go, 9th, 10th, 11th, somewhere in there. The one thing I'm noticing here is, this is Friday. It's on it's on the screen. So you got this short wave on the GFS Sunday evening in eastern Kansas that just sort of, flies east. So that's, part of the whole Monday system. All right.
Right.
Um,
And there
now,
is.
as opposed to some past runs, I've noticed that the trough axis with the next round of short waves is much further left than maybe about 3 or 4 runs ago, or even just the last
Right.
2 or 3 runs. And
Right.
it looks like it wants to bring almost a whole vortex down into Minnesota and into the Great Lakes and then swing it to the
Yes.
East Coast. I mean, that's a
Right.
powerhouse looking trough here that we're talking about for
Yes.
around the 9th and the 10th. And I
Yes.
just want to get your feelings on this, because my view has always been, when you get into this time frame, you get beyond 7 days, it's far more important to get a feel for what the upper air is doing as opposed to
Well,
what it spits out on surface maps. And the other
right.
thing is that I've noticed in the last number of days, whenever you look at the ensembles, as soon as you get out past 240 hours, you start looking in the 300 plus hours. It usually tends to flatten out and not show much
Always.
amplitude.
Right.
And I've noticed that, at least in this particular setup that we're going into, it's not that flat.
No. No. Well,
It really isn't. I
that's
mean,
why I showed.
I just think that speaks to the magnitude of the kind of cold air we're going to be dealing with here.
That's why I showed that European model, monthly model. Okay, the weekly model from back in December for the January 1st, because it showed a really strong vortex coming southward. So when you get that far out in advance, it might mean something. Then again, it might not. It might be BS. It might be Bravo Sierra. What that map is showing is, let's not worry about the lows and the highs. Let's look at what the map is telling. If that vortex comes that far south, then you know that the Arctic front is not going to be in Virginia or Pennsylvania or Kentucky. That Arctic front, like Joe Rayo mentioned, that's going to be down in Georgia and Alabama. Okay,
Yeah,
so when you get the vortex,
I'm going to bring up the North America view of this. So
when you get the
see
front that far south, a wave of low pressure will form on the front, but it will have a very hard time gaining latitude. Okay, so because the vortex is too far south, in other words, too cold to snow,
right?
Because the boundary temperature is so far south. Okay, so that is a problem if it comes that far south. Now, if it doesn't get, let's say it doesn't go to Michigan. Let's say it only goes to central Ontario. That's a different matter. But if the vortex goes into Michigan and then New York State, that's going to push the boundary down in Georgia and Alabama, and it might even be too cold for Virginia to snow.
Ring the bell.
Macy's is calling.
The executive producers just told me that we have hit 200 likes, 201 actually. So time to ring the bell once again. I don't have a harmonica or an air horn or whatever, but the ringing of the bell is just
I have a harmonica somewhere. I gotta find it. I have one. I gotta find it. I don't know what I did with it.
Jesus Christ.
Anyway, yeah.
And again, now that map, Joe and Joe, that map, you see that you just posted there, right? You see the strong red brown blob on the west coast.
Yeah,
it's not on the west coast. It's not on the west coast. It's in the eastern Pacific. That is the T&H pattern we just talked about. That's what it is. And when you get a positive T&H pattern, the vortex almost always drops south at least twice during the winter. Almost always. So that's what this is showing. It's a positive T&H pattern. Welcome to 2013-14, boys and girls.
I think that this pattern will loan itself. If we do get any kind of significant snow out of this pattern or this winter, I think instead of having the classic pattern of storms coming out of the Gulf of Mexico and up the eastern seaboard, it looks to me like we could see a lot of clipper activity, and maybe 1 or 2 clippers that will dive much further south than usual to off the mid-Atlantic coast and interact with the relatively warm offshore Gulf Stream and suddenly powerhouse into a major storm system. And it's been a while since we've seen one of these type of systems where the storm literally explodes due to very special atmospheric energy, deepens, so to speak, off the mid-Atlantic coast, and all of a sudden we find ourselves in the throes of a major snowfall. I'm not talking about one of these crippling 1 to 2 feet jobs, but still, it could be fun to have a storm system that drops down through the Great Lakes to, let's say, Norfolk, Virginia, or Salisbury, Maryland, and all of a sudden blows up and provides us with a quickie 3 to 6 or 4 to 8 inch snowfall. I see that more likely as opposed to, again, the classic pattern of storms racing up out of the Gulf of Mexico and up along the eastern seaboard, because it looks like in many cases here, the cold air may be just too dense or too potent for such storm systems in the deep south to penetrate. However, right. if you've got storms that are traveling along the outer periphery of that batch of cold air, sweeping on down and in, and then just off the coast, and then exploding and throwing all of that moisture back up toward us, that looks like a more likely pattern, I think, in this type of weather than what we would like to see or normally are accustomed to seeing. So we'll see how this all pans out.
And in that kind of scenario, Joe, what happens is you get very high snow ratios because the Arctic air is so dense.
Factor could be you don't get the standard 10-to-1 because the air is so cold.
Right.
You get 15 and even 20-to-1. So
right.
You don't need a whole heck of a lot of moisture
right.
to translate into a heck of a lot of snow.
Right. Exactly right. Precisely.
So we have a lot of folks that watch here from the deep south, Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi.
Yeah, I saw that comment. Let's
hear your speculation. If we're going to be talking, if we do wind up with a scenario where, because of what's going on out of the Atlantic, because of the strong blocking, that we do have something along the lines of I forgot which model it was today that had something trailing down along the southern states and bringing snow to North Florida and South Georgia on one of the runs. I mean, which who knows if that's even remotely. If that's even
right
real or not. But my question is, given the setup that we have with this really strong Atlantic jet, you got the blocking in Greenland, you've got the Pacific East High, where things wind up maybe dropping down further south. Is it possible that we could see an event of relative size across the deep south?
Yes, of course. Now, you have to remember, folks, okay, 3 inches of snow in Atlanta is absolutely the end of the world, okay? It is absolutely the end of the world. It's nothing, it's not even that significant in D.C. It's normally, when D.C. is in a snow drought, but normally it would not be, or Indianapolis or Louisville, but in Atlanta or Birmingham or Charlotte, that's a big freaking deal. And also, so the issue is, the risk for the South is fairly high because the cold air looks impressive and it pushes deep into the southern states. So your frontal boundary goes way to the south. So instead of having a low form on the front in Arkansas and then track to Virginia, okay, and then everybody north of it gets snow and ice, what happens is the same thing happens, except that now it happens in Louisiana and it goes towards Savannah or Myrtle Beach, okay? And as a result, the Ohio Valley and the Northeast miss out on it, and you get the snow and ice in the southern areas. That is a possibility. But again, that depends on a big polar vortex coming southward. That's what has to happen. Okay? If the vortex is just big and it's strong and it's north of the Great Lakes, okay, it's going to be cold. But if it gets, to Michigan, if it gets to New York State, that's going to change things. That's a different ballgame. I don't know. We just speculate. We don't know if that's going to happen.
How about with the Central Plains, because they're sort of on the, that northerly flow coming down, and the Central Plains, what would happen there?
Well, the Central Plains will be cold on my last date, so we're talking chilly. So,
when was your last date, by the way?
Who's president? So,
all right.
Anyway, yeah. Well, of course, they also have that. They get those Arctic fronts, and they get snow from just from the Arctic fronts coming through. So they can get that snow in the high ratio just from the Arctic fronts and the high winds. And the other thing is, if the vortex comes that far south, those winds are going to howl in the plain states. Okay, you'll get 50-mile-an-hour winds in the plain states. Temperatures of minus 25. It's going to be brutal if that vortex comes that far south. So, we'll see how it plays out. But it's a pretty promising looking pattern if you like it with snow and ice for everybody.
Well,
It's
yeah.
I'll tell you that with the last three,
And for those people in the deep south who are, hoping for snow where they are, there could be, and if this pattern is as cold as it has been suggested by Dave, and certainly it does look cold, at least in the immediate future. But if it goes through the entire winter season, there may be a shot or two where it gets so cold across much of the eastern seaboard that you get a storm trying to come out of the Gulf of Mexico, gets suppressed. Up here, people will be saying all the snow. Oh, darn it! I wish we had that coming up our way, but it doesn't. It stays well to the south. If it stays well to the south, and you get very cold air going all the way down into let's say the Piedmont or the Dixie states, that could very well cause a snowstorm. And we have seen on occasion, big snowfalls in parts of northern Georgia or northern and western South Carolina, western North Carolina, and even as far south as Alabama and northern Mississippi. So if you get one of those really cold outbreaks and you get one of those storms trying to come out of the Gulf of Mexico with the inability of coming very far north, guess who ends up getting the snow in situations like this? The deep south. And so that might very well be the story.
So when do you think, I mean, in your opinion, clarity comes into, when are we going to get what do you think we're going to get some clarity into?
Sure. Well, the January 6th event, the January 6th event will come into clarity around January 3rd.
Okay. It's, in other words, expect more model volatility between now and then.
Right. So over the break and New Year's Day, let's have a look at the models, whatever, drink heavily, what have you. And then January 3rd, by January 3rd, that will set up the pattern for January. That's set up the situation January 6th. And then after January 6th happens, we'll have a much better idea about January 9th and the severe Arctic outbreak. So that's how it's going to go. Boom, boom, boom. Those things are connected. So, break it into time slots. When this happens, then we'll know that happens, and then we'll know this happens, and then we'll know that happens. Boom, boom, boom.
I get the message. I'm just trying to pound into people who live by run to run to run.
Don't do that.
To run. What a waste of time and energy that is.
Right.
You've pretty well told everybody what is important here with respect to what's going on in the upper atmosphere. And the rest of it is going to eventually find its way into the models, and we'll know, with more certitude. But to go from run to run, and I mean, I had a laugh this morning because I go to bed, I'm 65 now. I'm about to turn 66. So after 9 o'clock, I start to fade. So I go to bed early. My days of staying up for the European at 1 o'clock in the morning are gone. Okay.
Right.
That's just not happening anymore. But that said, the 0Z run of the GFS had on a 0Z run, it had no January 6th event. It had a big January 10th event.
Yes.
The European had a January 6th event, and I also think it also had a January 10th event. Then the 6Z comes out.
Yes.
The 6Z comes out, and now the GFS has the January 6th event. The European has the January 6th event, had it on their 0Z, but the GFS lost the January 10th, 11th event completely.
Yes.
Completely gone.
Right.
And then they did this other thing at the 12Z, where now suddenly the European went from having a wrapped up low at Cleveland, having a low down south of Atlanta. Okay.
Right.
And then the GFS was still at Cleveland. Now it's down to West Virginia. So, we're going to see this volatility is just going to continue for the next 5 days, folks.
Yes.
Getting wrapped up in every run is a waste of energy.
Now, once we get into the blocking pattern, once that block forms in Greenland, once you have the ocean low, in Southeast Canada, then the models will have a much better idea because those are stable features. Having the block in the Western-based negative NAO, having it in Greenland and Baffin Island and Labrador means that the ocean low is now a Rex block. The low is on top, underneath the high. That is a Rex block, not a mega block. That is a very stable pattern, which is going to make it a lot easier for the models to figure out what's going to happen 5, 6, 7, 8 days out. But we have to get to that point first. Then we'll know.
Gotcha. All right. I just want to acknowledge, because we did have 2 super chat hits tonight. I didn't get a chance to mention this. Sal Pachi, thank you for hitting the tip jar tonight. Brandon Doherty, thank you also for hitting the tip jar. One last question, Dave, before we go, because we're coming up on almost 8:50. I'll let Joe.
Yeah.
You might also have a last question. So where do you think this goes beyond January?
Don't know yet. If the La Nina is collapsing and we go into February with neutral conditions, which is what we had in late November and October, okay, then I think we have a pretty good winter coming up.
Okay.
Because we are in neutral conditions. Okay. I'm not necessarily severe winter, but at least you won't have La Nina to deal with. I mean, realize again, like I said earlier, in the last 30 years since 1994, we've only had 7 winters with no El Nino or La Nina.
Right.
Okay. So if you have that means you're gonna have a normal winter, normal patterns. So yeah, that'd be great. So if La Nina is gone, that means February and March will be okay. We'll have cold, we'll have snow, we'll have some mild days. It'll be okay. It won't be a blowtorch. It may not be a severe cold, but at least it'll be winter.
Right.
And we'll have a lot more good shows.
Okay, so and for the commodities traders, we're going to go long OJ. We're going to go long. We're going to go long heating oil.
All right.
And we're going to go long nat gas.
Right.
All
yeah.
Right? This one.
Yeah.
Write that down, Joe Rayo. You have to build. You have to continue to amass your incredible portfolio.
I'll have to check with Ralph Bellamy and Don Amici.
Yeah.
Yes.
Turn those machines back on. Turn those machines back on.
David, we love you.
Who doesn't?
How much time have you got? And
fly, eagles, fly on the road to. Sorry.
We love having you here, and like as I always tell you, you're always welcome. You shot me a message today. It says, "I want to go on," and I said, "Okay, sure." I'm an open book. So thank you very much for making this a really interesting show and a good teaching moment, because a lot of this stuff
I like to teach.
Is
really
I learn something from you every time you're on. So
I love this. I love to spread the gospel of science. So that's I'm an apostle of science.
Which
really?
book?
What?
Which gospel?
Or
whose gospel?
The Carl Sagan, Richard Dawkins gospel.
Right. There's good severe weather in Luke's gospel. So just to point that out.
Oh yeah, that's true. There was.
Rayo, do you have anything to add here?
I just want to mention with Sal Pachi, and he's already aware of this, but I met Sal's wife at the Jefferson Valley Mall a few days before Christmas, and actually did a video with her for Sal's behalf. So I'm wondering whether or not Sal had a chance to. I'm sure he did get a chance to see it, but it was a lot of fun meeting somebody who is a part of our Joe and Joe page on so many nights. I got a chance to meet his other half, so to speak, and it was a lot of fun doing that.
Well, good. We have somebody here. We have Brent Williams from Murfreesboro, Tennessee, which is actually not far from me.
Yeah. I've been to the battlefield there. I was there during the eclipse, after the eclipse. Great battlefield.
It's pretty cool.
Really good battlefield.
All right. So, okay, folks. So, this wraps up, I guess, our Sunday night podcast, and we shall return. Oh, we have also somebody. We have Mountain Soaring Eagles
Yeah.
from Lebanon, Tennessee. Welcome, mountain soaring eagles. And we do,
Yeah.
I mean, and we do have a lot of eagles here in North Georgia. So I get it. A lot of bald eagles.
Yeah.
Anyway,
And Brandon Grabachoff, I mean, maybe you ought to tune into 660 FAN or 880, which used to be the great WCBS. He keeps asking about baseball questions. Here we are in the throes of a very exciting winter weather pattern. All he keeps asking for the last hour and 20 minutes or whatever is, will the Mets keep Brandon? Will the Mets keep the polar bear, Alonso? I mean, if you want to talk sports, go to a sports station. My God, I mean, this is completely different. I mean, we're not into sports
or at
tonight.
least wait till spring training starts, or if it's a slow weather day, then you can ask that question.
Yeah, yeah, but this is
Yeah.
exciting. This is
All right.
this is this is. I mean, like I said earlier, at this
So,
time, the last 2 or 3 years, we've had hardly anything to talk about. Now, finally, we've got a winter to talk about, and suggestions of cold and maybe even some snow. So that's what we're concentrating on. We're not talking about baseball.
Yeah.
there's
Brandon,
still
Brandon, if you want to answer to your question about that, with the Mets and trading, go to this website, imamoron.com. It'll help you out a lot.
oh,
Holy
Dave. We
mackerel.
we try very much to say things, to tell our audience members in a nice way. Okay,
Well,
we try to be nice. I know that's just you know
I mean, come on.
you might want to work on that for me.
Yeah,
Okay.
but he's been hassling Rayo for like an hour and a half. I mean, come on. Enough is enough already, boys and
Yeah,
girls.
I guess so. No, no. And I
So,
actually was usually when we get an audience of this size, we usually get the porn trolls on the
yeah.
chat board. They didn't. A couple of trolls showed up, but they weren't the porn trolls. But I think over the next couple of nights, if the audience numbers stay high, we'll probably start to see them. So that's how we know that we've made it here in this on
And and
YouTube.
Joe is and Joe's absolutely right. When we have a light agenda, we talk about other
Sure.
things, sometimes
Sure.
movies and TV
Sure.
shows, and baseball and sports as well. But tonight
Sure.
we were heavy. We were top heavy, so to speak, on weather and a lot of weather. And so really, this was not the time really to talk about
Yeah. Yeah.
anything in terms of
You should
sport.
have figured that out. I know. So, all
Oh well. Oh,
right, boys and girls. This was
Hold on,
great.
Dutch Mass. I love your logo. It's a test pattern. It's perfect. I love it. Your avatar, whatever they call those things. Okay. Yeah. So everybody, we'll see you tomorrow night at 7:30. Joe, 255 likes tonight.
Two
Well,
fifty six on my count.
wait till we get close to January, the first couple of days of January. Woohoo!
All right. Well, the snow weenies are going to be upset. They'll be standing on the edge of the cliff if they don't get at least something out of this cold weather
Yeah,
stretch.
I know.
All
I
right.
know.
Dave, thanks a lot. Joe, see you tomorrow. And
Keep the
everybody else,
faith, guys.
we'll see you tomorrow at 7:35. Night,
All
night.
right. Great.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.